I tend to talk fast, something like this, but I told Chris I'd take at least 12 minutes. All right, so you're going to read a couple of quotes on justice. They come from a lot of different places. Read them, think about them. I'm not going to ask anybody to read out loud. Do you agree? Do you disagree? What do they mean to you? One thing you'll notice is that quotes about justice tend to use the word justice a lot. There's not a lot of clear definition about it. There's a lot of people, a lot of different places where, humans care about justice. There's sort of a universal constant for it. Those quotes come from the Bible, the Quran, President George W. Bush, and Mao Zedong. There's a lot of different people on that list, and some of them we would say had not necessarily behaved very justly towards their people. We care about justice, we're not necessarily good at it. So, let's think a little bit further about justice. Where can we go? Right. Again, it's a nice definition, comes from Merriam-Webster, but sort of the main important word is the little one, just. Okay, well, we're pretty much using the same thing to define itself again. I just copied the whole thing because I won't have to remember it for you. But the important parts here is that we're using things like reasonable, proper, righteous, deserved, lawful. These are all things we're going to think about when we think about justice. They're sort of like all the things we would tie in when you're thinking about, if I'm doing justice to someone. You're doing what's fair and what's right, what's deserved. Now, walk with me here as we sort of think about how we as a society deal with justice. Imagine you're an officer. All right, you can do it. It's just imaginary. You might not want to be one, but I believe in you here. You're an officer. You get a call. Somebody's come home. They've got some chickens. They've been raising chickens. They really enjoy these chickens. They're dead. There's some dog. It's pretty cute, but it is just a chicken murderer. You just got dead chickens all over the place. So you're the officer. You write down the statement. There's dead chickens. And you go back. It goes to the court. Chicken killer dog goes through the process. Well, what happens if you are the system, the society, part of our process of doing justice? Well, what's your first option? You get rid of the dog. There's other people with chickens. They don't want their chickens to be eaten. It's clearly a chicken murderer. So, lock it up in dog jail or kill it. Well, that's not great. It was a cute dog. We're not super happy about that. So let's try something else. Let's put a fine on the people who own the dog. Now they know, it matters. When you got to keep track of your dog, you can't let it go killing chickens. Well, that might be difficult for people to pay. There's no real proof that the dog might not escape again, kill more chickens. So instead of the fine, we require the people to take the dog to some sort of anti-chicken killing training. Sounds better, but again, we can't prove that will have solved our long-term problem. In all these things, we've sort of been going through this. We've figured out, all right, the dog did bad things. Let's try to make something bad happen to the dog. Well, that doesn't quite handle it. We make something bad happen to the person who had the dog, doesn't handle it. Well, maybe we try to move from there and help the dog do better. Iffy effectiveness. All right, so restorative justice. This would be a criminal justice in which we want to rehabilitate offenders. We want to reconcile with victims in the community. So we've done an okay job so far talking about the community, right? We've maybe solved this chicken murdering dog issue. But we've totally neglected the victim. If you're the person who called in about your dead chickens, nothing that has happened so far has done anything for you and your lack of chicken. If we have a system in place that can deal effectively with our victims' needs, if we can meet together and say, hey, your dog was cute, this is really a bummer. I thought my chickens were cute, I feel like this is a bummer. What can we work out? Maybe you have a chance to say, hey, the fence is just really bad around my house. didn't have a chance to patch it yet. And like the dog's just a year old, he's just out of control. He's always chewing on the fence and getting out. So you say, okay, well, let's talk about it. Instead of mandating that you pay a fine or mandating that you take the dog to some training that might not be offered for hundreds of miles, you have to drive a long way every week to get the dog there. You work it out with the people together, and you say, all right, we agree that you're going to rebuild the fence to a satisfactory level. We agree that you're going to bury the chain links 2 feet down so the dog can't dig it out. You're going to figure out the value of 3-month-old chickens and procure chickens for the person who's lost their chickens. Right? The community is satisfied, right? Because the issue of the dog getting out and the chickens being attacked, or people, potentially, is probably solved at this point. We've probably dealt with that concern from the community at large. We've probably dealt with the offender's dog effectively, that this dog can no longer engage in bad behavior of chicken killing, and it will at least have a little bit longer to stay in its fence and grow up and get lazy and not effectively chase chickens. And the victim is feeling better because, well, they're not your chickens anymore, but your capacity to get eggs, to eat chicken later, these things, they're coming back to you. We've restored what was lost. This is generally the how-to of what happens, right? This is essentially my job. Sit down with people and walk through this. What happened? What were you thinking and feeling? Who's been affected and how? And what do you need to make things right? That's a pretty short meeting if you just go through those 4 questions. We're going to have to do a little bit more than that often. But if we think about, we take our chicken analogy and we make it into a 3rd grader who's really bad at emotionally regulating. Generally, they're pretty good in class. They can focus on whatever, but if somebody sets them off, they just can't hold it together. And this happens a number of times. The teacher separates them, bear hugs this kid to keep him out of the way, but the kid's flailing. Teacher gets hit. All right, is that assault? If it happens enough times and the teacher feels like nothing can happen, the principal says, we're not getting through to him. Eventually, society says, look, kid's interrupting everyone else's learning environment. We got to take him out of the school. We got to separate him out for everybody's benefit. That might help society. It doesn't do a lot for the other kids who've been hit or the teacher. And also, it's a really short-term solution that doesn't help in the long term. I think that all of you could say, well, if a kid's education essentially stops at 3rd grade, it's not going to do great things for us long term as a community, as a society. To be able to sit down and effectively talk through this is not fun. It's not like easy. I mean, I enjoy it, it's my job. But everyone's feelings are going to be tightly involved and interwoven. And to be able to hold these kind of conversations with a feeling of equanimity, with a sort of professional empathy, with a way of saying, all right, yeah, you're in the wrong. Your dog killed the chickens. But also, I understand that you like your dog and he's a puppy. How can we work this out? What can happen? Say to you, yeah, you lost your chickens and you're really bummed about it. You feel very hurt. Your backyard is no longer safe. You're concerned about your toddler playing outside. Can we have a conversation between the 2 of you where you can all work out your differences? I'll be honest, I don't always feel like this is great, right? Restorative justice is still going to take place within our broader justice system. Myself, the other people who work at OVM, we're only going to work with the cases we're referred. If I'm referred cases of these out-of-control 3rd graders, and all of them are minority students, I have no control over understanding what's happening at the school to make this be the case. I have no control of saying, yeah, maybe there's something else. Why are they even being referred to me through the court? Why are they getting that far? We don't necessarily have control over these things. All we can do is try to work most effectively within the system that we have to deal with these small issues as they come and help the community and the people involved get their own closure. Dealing with these broader systems issues are the kind of things that I think you'll hear more from Chris. But it's a way of thinking about justice to address not just, all right, you did bad, we're going to make something bad happen to you. But to say, all right, there was an issue in our community. We have a problem that exists. Someone's been hurt. There has been harm. What are all the things that need to be done to make it right? And how can we move effectively on from here? Oh, I still owe you 40 seconds. I mean, really, I don't want to drag this out, but I think that there is a point to say, when we start out thinking about those first verses posted, right, the Micah 6:8, good and pithy, it's essentially, do justice, love mercy, walk humbly. Right, 2 words, do justice. If we are very serious about following that directive, if we're very serious about making that happen, I think we do also have to be very serious about understanding what justice means to us and how we go about gaining that thing for the broadest swath of our people and our community, and working effectively to make that happen.
All right. Thank y'all. It's awesome to be here as a Tabor student, to have the opportunity to speak at chapel. It's always a pleasure. And I think my colleague, I think my colleague here, Laird, did a great job of explaining restorative justice from a more everyday, common perspective. What I'll be doing here is coming from more of a more deeper issue in mass incarceration and how our society can kind of resolve those issues with a more restorative justice approach. And Offender Victim Ministries, as my colleague Laird has discussed, Offender Victim Ministries applies restorative justice principles to many aspects of the society. And I'm here to bring light to the social justice issue of mass incarceration and how programs such as prison ministries helps resolve the issues of it. And mass incarceration is an issue that does not really get the spotlight because how it deals with the population of people that are often rejected by society. It may be the hate, the animosity, and the overall neglect they face, is maybe they deserve some of that for some of the crimes that they committed. I'm not standing up here to justify any crime that an inmate has committed. I'm here to address the issue of the way crime is handled in our society. And with that being said, the issue of how crime is handled in the United States is one that needs attention. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, so you may think that the rate of crime is maybe high as well. But that's not the case in the slightest. So, the incarceration rate's like number 1 in the world. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. But like the actual crime rate does not match. It's not proportional. It just doesn't make sense. So this brings to spotlight the issue of mass incarceration and how we're just sending people to prison. According to the Uniform Crime Reports, the crime rate has actually decreased since 1978. So this clearly shows that the criminal justice system is flawed and that there's not a lot that is adding up. Once you are in the prison system, it is extremely difficult to find success in life once released. Once an inmate is paroled, many restrictions are placed on them, making it more than likely that they will have a parole violation. Within reality being set up to fail, these inmates end up back in their cell. According to the National Institute of Justice, 2/3 of inmates who are paroled end up back in prison in 3 years. This ultimately shows the flawed nature of the criminal justice system. The stigma towards inmates is that they deserve to spend their time in prison, and maybe so, but they will eventually get out. You'll be surprised at the percentage of people who are not life-term, like lifers. We call them lifers. According to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 95% of state inmates will be released at some point. So, that's a lot. That needs So what are we doing with these inmates that are being released? This high percentage of inmates that are being released, that's what needs to be addressed and looked at, making sure that they have the means to stay out of the prison system. So whether you personally care about inmates or not, this is a reality that is very significant and may even affect you. You cannot assume that an inmate will know what he did is wrong, and just by spending time in the cell will change them. From a Christian perspective, as Christians, we are called to love inmates with the love Christ has for us. And I wholeheartedly believe this because I'm a Christian man, so I'm all for this. And ultimately because when Christ died on the cross, he died on the cross for everyone, including inmates, thus showing that it is a mandate for us as Christians to be concerned with inmates. And and that's great. I think that's awesome. As Christians, that's more than enough to stand behind and take action against mass incarceration. But say if religion's not your thing, say if you're sitting through this chapel and be like, man, this sucks. I don't care about religion. I'm just doing it for the chapel credit. So even if that's you, which is probably a lot, and you couldn't care less, there's still a reason to care from a secular standpoint. With a good amount of them being released, they're coming out as the same person as they came in, maybe even worse, thus contributing to high recidivism rates within the prison. These inmates are released back in society without any growth, thus contributing to crime that can even affect you. I mean, normally you would think just, locking them up and to keep them off the streets would work, but that does not work at all. It's not in the slightest. Just because a man spending time in a cell for years and years does not mean that they will change. And quite frankly, the nature of prison kind of contradicts that change. More often than not, you would see them, like I said, being released back in society, a worse person than they came in. So what are we actually doing to address that? So yeah, it is the approach of how crime is handled that determines the rate of crime, which I wholeheartedly believe. And I'm not just standing up here saying something I think sounds good. I'm actually giving y'all statistics to support what I'm saying. So hopefully, maybe I have a little bit of credibility there. And it's a great read. According to the book of the New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander, there's a deeper way in the meaning of the way that crime is handled. For example, for you history majors, you may know a deal about this more than others. The goal for the war on drugs in 1971 was to keep criminals off the streets and reduce crime. The government would fight to get drugs out of the inner city. Despite this effort, Reagan announced this drug sales and usage actually increased within the inner city. After drug use increased, the prison population also increased as a result. Now, the places that were targeted were ironically the neighborhoods where people of color lived. This shows the true aim of the war on drugs, to get as many people into the prison system so that they then become second-class citizens. And what I mean by this is that when you're released, you're not just, hey, go out, do whatever you want. You have a whole lot of restrictions placed on you when you're paroled. So it's like you could hardly get back on your feet. And even if you try to follow the rules, the parole board sets on you, it's like you kind of set up to fail in a way. Some of them are just extremely harsh, extremely unrealistic. Because when you really think about it, how are you gonna you send somebody back into society for the crime they committed? How do you expect them to thrive and succeed when they are put back into the same community that put them in the prison system to begin with? So that's something to think about. And yeah, by becoming second-class citizens, it is a way to maintain power over a certain demographic, which, as this book addresses, and which I believe is people of color, Hispanics, African Americans, Asians, all of us. Mass incarceration is referred to the new Jim Crow because how it focuses and restricts people of color, just as the original Jim Crow laws did. Although it is important to note that the civil rights movement put an end to blatant segregation. So the civil rights movement, what I mean by this is that you can't get away with being as straightforward, as as the original Jim Crow laws were, because the civil rights movement put an end to that. So in order for segregation and the new Jim Crow to survive in modern day society, it evolved in a way that would be appropriate, and that is through mass incarceration. And yeah, like I said, it evolved in a way that still discriminates and maintains power over people of color without being as straightforward as the original Jim Crow. Ultimately, because of the fact that if the government really wanted to put an end to crime and drugs within the communities, they would put money and resources to lower communities to help bring about change and reform so they would not have to resort to crime to survive. Rather than just putting money into locking everyone up, this shows the government true intention from the war on drugs. And as I stated previously, just putting the resources and money and police force, all that, into trying to lock everybody up, like I said earlier, statistically, that did not work at all. Crime rates increased. So what are we actually doing? And the government, and where I want this point to go is that these resources, the government should have put them into restoring communities, giving these lower class, giving these Hispanic communities, African American communities the ability, the chance even to just to succeed in their communities that they're in, rather than resorting to crime. And this thus showing how modern day racism is hiding behind a tough on crime rhetoric. And it makes sense. Why would anybody be against getting tough on crime? But the deception is from the way crime is handled, leading, like as I explained, to the new Jim Crow. And this is high IQ right here. I mean, like I said, why would anybody be against tough on crime? It makes sense. We want to remove crime from our streets, so we're going to take the criminals off the streets. But it's really a deception, as I stated before, to somewhat create a new Jim Crow, which is referred to as mass incarceration. So you guys may think that I'm full of it, and the government was just doing its part to take crime off the streets. But on the contrary, stats show that as the prison population increased, so did the crime rate, thus showing how ineffective prison is in deterring crime. When you are already disadvantaged and do not have the resources to a decent way of life, you resort to do whatever it takes in order to survive and take care of your family, which may come in the form of selling drugs for income. This is ultimately what the war on drugs should have focused on, helping those that are disadvantaged survive without having to rely on selling drugs. So, I mean, normally we as people like to think, oh, they're criminals, they deserve to be locked up, this is what they deserve. And, like I said, maybe so, but we need to look at why they're a criminal. Why are they resorting to these crimes? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? And through statistical data and countless research and through even talking with inmates in my field of work and what I've done so far, it's like a resounding thing, under the same underlying themes, that they came from a bad neighborhood, no support system, really no positive influence in their life, no one really cared for them. So I don't know. Maybe if you were placed in that same boat, maybe you would have, it's safe to say, maybe you would have turned out the same way. Who knows? Maybe you're just that special. Maybe you're just that strong-willed. But when it comes down to it, I think if the government really wanted to reduce the rate of crime, maybe resources to make communities flourish would be the right route to go. I don't know. That's just me. That's what I'm gathering through research and through the book of the New Jim Crow. So, how do we at Offender Victim Ministries, how do I, as the director of Prison Ministries, address this problem of mass incarceration? And we do this through the M2 visitation program and prison arts. The M2 visitation program is where you can visit with the inmate that doesn't receive regular visits. And what this does is helps bring accountability and growth to the inmate. And this sounds good, it's great, but we need to understand what this actually does. And what this does is that, like I said, it gives a positive influence to those that maybe they had lacked that their entire life. And that's what I said. Like countless inmates I've talked to, countless inmates I've interacted with and interviewed, it's just like the same. It's like they're all reading the same script. They never had no one to tell them that they can be something, no one to support them, no one to be there for them. And I talked with the inmate. Inmate said, he said, yeah, I've been a criminal because no one told me otherwise. I thought that's what bad guys do, and that's what I've been labeled as ever since elementary school. So that makes you think. That makes you think how are we handling crime, and how and the support system and all that can play into mass incarceration. So these programs that we offer have shown many positive changes to everyone involved, thus resulting in the inmate leaving prison a better person than he came in. In a sense, the restorative justice rehabilitative programs can help prevent future crime by using the time the inmates have to serve in a way that brings about change. And like I said earlier, you can't make that assumption that just because they're in their cell, just because they got booked, just because they're spending years, that they know what they did was wrong and they're changing at all. So what I'm trying to get across to y'all is that programs such as the prison ministries are a necessity for rehabilitative change within the inmates. These things are just needed to lower recidivism rates in order to change the person and individual, and it's just more than locking somebody up. I hope y'all understand that. And like I said, consequently, once released, keeping them out of the prison system and reducing the issues of mass incarceration that our country faces. And like I said, finally, to kind of wrap all this up, finally, we need to spread awareness and be open to helping those that are incarcerated. And like I said, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you're like, whatever, you can talk all you want, I'm not a Christian, I'm a zone out. Okay, you can zone out all you want. Crime can affect all of us, no matter who you are. And these programs can help lower crime, in a sense, in the future, by helping inmates get the support and positive influence that they need. And through the, like I keep saying, through these visitation programs, these inmates, you just see it's awesome. It's an awesome experience. You just see the change in them. I heard countless testimonies of how just having somebody to care for them, having somebody to visit with them, having somebody to support into them, how much that can make a change. So yeah, thank you for your time. It's always great to speak, and Laird. I think Laird did a great job telling us how we can apply restorative justice to everyday conflicts. So I'm gonna pray us out. Lord Jesus Christ, thank you for bringing us here together. Thank you for giving us, Laird and I, the strength and confidence to speak through your will, and we really appreciate it. Please pray for these Tabor students, because I'm one of them. We're struggling right now. It's finals week. It's about time to get home. It's finals week is approaching, and just please be with us in this last couple weeks of class. And Lord, please may this message that we presented reach these individuals in a way. Thank you for everything you do, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.